Hello and welcome everyone to the first webinar of the International EBA Community of Practice in 2019. I have shared my screen. I hope you can see now the presentation. My name is Andrea Bender and I'm working for the BMU IKI-funded global project on mainstreaming EBA, which is implemented by GIZ. Before we dive into the topic, I would like to give you some technical remarks first. This webinar will be recorded and published on Adaptation Community Net afterwards. So those of you who would not like to be recorded through the chat box function, I would kindly ask you to leave the Skype room now, but you can watch the webinar afterwards online on Adaptation Community Net and our YouTube channel. You are all muted as participants, but please feel free to actively join the webinar by using the chat box function on the left-hand side. And if you have technical problems, please send us your email address so we will try to help you further. So it's 3 minutes after 5 o'clock. I think we can start now. Today's topic of the webinar are two different tools to support the implementation of ecosystem-based adaptation. So here on this slide, you can see the agenda of today. First of all, Tânia Salvaterra from WCMC will provide a general introduction to the EBA tool Navigator. It is a searchable database of tools and methods relevant to EBA. And we will have a 10-minute slot for your questions. And then Camilo de la Garza from GIZ in Mexico will present a tool to prioritize EBA measures to address climate change adaptation. This is a method for selecting the best EBA measures portfolio for implementation in a specific setting. We'll then have another session for minutes for questions. And now I would like to ask you, Tânia, to unmute yourself, and a very warm welcome to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrea. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thanks, Andrea, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. So I will give you a bit of an overview of the Navigator of tools and methods for EBA that we've developed. And I will also show you how you can use the tool in this presentation. Next slide, Andrea, please. So what is this EBA Tools and Methods Navigator? So first and foremost, it's a searchable database of existing tools and methods that are relevant for EBA. And next slide. And it's also a collection of examples of tool applications. So situations where people have used specific tools and what their experience and which context they were used are also present there. And next slide. And the aim of the Navigator is mainly to help planners and practitioners easily find and understand the tools and methods available to support their EBA-related work, and also to understand gaps in the current availability and accessibility of tools and methods. Next slide. So just a bit of background to the Navigator. So this was developed as part of the IKI-funded project, Ecosystem-based Adaptation, Strengthening the Evidence and Informing Policy. This was a project implemented by IIED, IUCN, and UNEP-WCMC colleagues. And the project's major component deals with evaluating the effectiveness of EBA measures. And here at WCMC, we developed a qualitative research approach for this through this Navigator. So what needs did we identify throughout this project? From discussions with in-country project partners and surveys we conducted with the wider EBA community of practice, one of the barriers to the wider uptake of EBA was identified as being the availability and accessibility of tools, methods, and just general technical knowledge on EBA. So basically everyone was calling for more tools. However, an initial inventory of tools and approaches for EBA that we did showed that actually many of the tools are already available, and these can help EBA planners and practitioners. And in this initial inventory, we found over 200 tools. So the need actually lied in making them more accessible rather than making more tools, which doesn't mean there are no gap areas, just that many tools can be modified rather than starting from scratch. So in terms of Navigator functionalities, the one that would hopefully be most useful to you would be what we call the search interface, which is a function where you can search for tools according to different criteria that are more relevant to you. This can be, for example, a particular ecosystem that you're working on, a particular scale, whether it be local, municipal, or national level, or a particular EBA stage you need a tool for, whether it be planning, design, implementation, M&E, or mainstreaming stages. So you can use any of these criteria to search for tools, and then you get results matching this criteria. And these results will give you a bit more detail about the different tools, whether it be what type of resources or time you require when using it, what type of skills or training you might need, how accessible it is, in what languages it's available, and so on. So just to give you a bit of an overview of what we have in the Navigator. So we profiled about 242 tools and methods. And we found that a large number of tools will cover or be relevant for most stages of EBA, although we did find fewer that were relevant or could be used particularly for valuation and mainstreaming stages. Next slide. And we also found that most tools are quite general, so they could be applicable to a range of ecosystem types and contexts. So you see here that most of the tools we found were made for marine or coastal areas, urban or agriculture, and that very few entries in the database are designed for specific ecosystem types like rangelands and grasslands or mountains. But that doesn't mean that tools that are listed as belonging, quote unquote, to a different ecosystem cannot be applied or adapted to a different one. So in terms of who the tools and methods are designed for, again, quite a broad result. We have 211 tools that can be relevant for project planners and managers. And we have about 148 and 167 tools that can be relevant for policy or decision makers. In terms of languages that the tools are available, most tools are available in English, and sadly, only about 35 tools are available in other languages. And in terms of access, nearly all the tools are open access, with only 9 being restricted. So in terms of next steps or what we are doing now, we are sharing the Navigator widely, and we have the pilot version available online via the IIED website. And we are still collecting feedback and giving people opportunity to tell us about tools that we might have not included. And this can be done until 15th of March. So if you have an opportunity to have a look and you feel like you have something you would like to comment, or there are tools you know that you didn't see listed, please get in touch until that date. And then ultimately, we are making the Navigator available to the public and promoting it among practitioners and planners to help them do EBA more effectively. We're also doing these webinars for you, and that's it. So now I would quite like to show you an example of how to use the tool, and I will attempt to share my screen, if that works.
Does it work for you to take over?
Yeah. Can you see? Can you see the Excel file?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, okay, I hope this works. So when you open the tool, it will open on the search interface tab. But before we go through that, I would just like to have a quick run of the other tabs available. So you also have the front page tab, just with the title. You have the About tab, which gives just a brief introduction to the Navigator, how the idea for a Navigator of tools came about, and an overview of its aim and structure. You have the Instructions tab with a bit of guidance on how to use the Navigator, including instructions for searching the database and also how to use how to add tools and methods to the database. Then we also have the full list of EBA tools and methodologies in the database of tools for EBA tab. And finally, we have a section with examples of tool applications. So this has information on user experiences of applying the different tools. And for each tool, there's information of country and site of implementation, what was the ecosystem that was relevant in that case, when it was implemented, and details of how the tool was adapted and used in each context. Okay, so now back to the search interface tab. So in this tab, as I said before, you can search the database of tools and methods using different criteria that are most suited to you, whether it be ecosystem type, audience, type of research, language, or EBA stage. So I would just like to show you a couple of examples of hypothetical situations of how the search function could be used. So first one, imagine I'm a project planner, I'm working on a coastal area, and I'm looking at what adaptation options are available during the design stages of my project. So I could come to the tool and I would select Project Planner because that's the most relevant to me. I would select Marine and Coastal Ecosystem because it's the area I'm working on. And then I would select Design in the EBA stage section because I'm looking for options to implement my project. And then I would just click Search Database. And then the results matching, the results with tools matching your search criteria will appear automatically in the Search Results tab. So you see in this case, we have quite a few tools that are relevant for us to use. So you can just go through each of the lines and find a bit more detail about each of the tools. And some of them will also have at the very end a link to examples of tool applications. So if we have any user experiences of a particular tool, you can click the Go to Examples link, and it will take you directly to a user experience of that tool. And just to finalize, another example could be if I was a policy or decision maker and I was looking at mainstreaming EBA in a dryland area, for example. So I could come to the drop-down menus again and select policy maker in a dryland area. And then I don't want, I'm not interested in design options anymore. I'm interested in mainstreaming. And every time you make a new search, make sure you clear previous selections. Otherwise, it will consider all of them again. And I will click search. And in this case, we only have one example. And this will happen sometimes. And if you feel like you need more, you might try to broaden some of the criteria selected before by selecting no filter or selecting something else. Because like I said before, some of the tools that are attributed to a particular ecosystem, for example, could still be applied in different ones in another scenario. So that's the sharing screen for me. I will try to stop sharing. And I hope Andrea can put her presentation again.
Yes, I hope it works
Great.
now. Can you see?
Great. So that's it for me. I'm adding on the screen a link to the Navigator, which is currently on the IIED website. You can download it and have a look. And feel free to provide any feedback until the 15th of March. And the person collecting feedback is my colleague, Charlotte, whose email is also on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tânia. This was a very insightful presentation, and also I'm glad that we were able to see how the EXO tool works.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, if there are questions from the audience, please use the chat box function on the left-hand side. And yeah, use the possibility to provide feedback on the tool Navigator. We can share also the website again afterwards. Just looking whether there are some questions already. So Tânia, does the Navigator give contact personnel for assistance with troubleshooting in some of the tools?
So at the moment, the contact personnel is us, WCMC. So Charlotte in this case, or me, or Sylvia Vikander, who has also been involved. At the moment, because it's still a pilot, we're still working on some bugs that might not be working, or some functions that might not be super easy to work on. So for any problems at the moment, you can just contact us.
Okay, great. And then the next question related to that, after the pilot phase closes, where and when will the final tool be available?
So I think it will stay available on the IIED website as an Excel format, which can be used online. We will share more updates. We would like to look into making into more a web version, which could be used online, but this is something we're still exploring. So we'll stay in touch with any updates.
Okay, thank you very much. I think so far there are no further questions. Maybe another questions, do you have plans in translating the tool maybe?
It's another thing we discussed, but at the moment I think if it's translated, it would be at a later stage, so not right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no further questions now, thank you very much, Tânia. Many greetings to Cambridge. And now I would like to hand over to our colleague in Mexico, Camilo. A very warm welcome to you, and please unmute yourself so we can check whether the technique is working.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, first of all, hello to all the assistants in this series of webinars. It's a real honor to be with you at this particular moment and to present the advances in the work we have made in Mexico. So what I'm going to talk about is a latest version of an updated tool that we delivered in Mexico. It's called Methodology to Prioritize Climate Change Adaptation Measures. And what we have done is we have updated it with the approach or the focus on EBA measures, particularly in the terrain. So we can skip on the next slide, please. First of all, this is a slide where it's more technical information. It's just to remind us that to adapt or to integrate the ecosystem-based adaptation approach, we must use a mainstreaming cycle. This is in order to adapt it or to mainstream it across multiple sectors. where we, or different scales of the territory where we would like to use this approach on EBA. So mainly the cycle starts at the top, and it suggests the users to have to apply a climate lens. This is to consider when we want to hand out development options in a community, whether it's in the private sector or is in the governmental sector, or in the community sectors, that all the decisions have to be tailored with the climate perspective. This is to understand and to screen all the points where climate change adaptation can enter, and also select the essential sectors and ecosystems or the stakeholders that will be intervening or involving in the selection of the adaptation measures. Once we do this, we can then go to the next step, that is assess the vulnerability, to identify what are the impacts, the climate impacts that will enhance our vulnerability or make us less resilient to the impacts on climate change. So we have to consider different components of vulnerability, as United Nations suggests, and that there are exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. We must then, with different tools, have like a climate change impact, where we can identify in a specific territory which are the negative climate impacts that will affect that population or that ecosystems or that territories, and then with this identify what adaptation options we can have in the process. So we have to describe and characterize all the adaptation measures that we can, or the activities that we could do with a particular focus on ecosystem-based adaptation, whether it's in a rural context or whether it is in a urban context. Once we've done that, we can then use the tool that I'm going to present to you this day. That it's a tool in order to prioritize and to select those adaptation options. So we have two steps very important, that are like the multi-criteria analysis and the cost-benefit social analysis in order to value economically the alternatives that we are prioritizing. Once we've done that, we can then go to the next step, to implement all of those prioritized adaptation options, and then the final step would be to evaluate if we are really reaching, or we are reducing vulnerability, or we are adapting in the territory with this climate changing situation in the present and in the future. So that's very important. Then we must suggest that we have to understand, when we have a lenses on EBA, on ecosystem-based adaptation, we should always understand the functionality of the ecosystem. What are the services of the ecosystems that provides to our territories in the rural and also in the urban context? So I'm not going to stop further on, because I want to be a little bit faster. So we can go to the next slide, please. Then I'm going to talk about the background of the methodology. Well, first of all, it was tailored for Mexico, because the government, the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources in Mexico, as a partner with GIZ, the Mexican-German, a specific program, it's Mexican-German Climate Change Alliance. We have been working together since 2013, 2012, in order to support the consolidation of the national policy of climate change. And one of those collaborations was to identify, first to explain what is adaptation, how could we understand it? How can we apply it with a governmental or within the process of policy planning and the policy implementation within the territory and the country? And they asked GIZ if we could deliver, or we could figure out how to establish or to set a tool that would provide support for the decision-making process and the planning process to identify the different adaptation alternatives or adaptation options that each sector within the capacities of the government could apply in the territory. So the background is that Mexico is highly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. We have the country has developed an extensive institutional policy framework. The country has a general law on climate change since 2012 and recently has been updated. So we created, and with hand to hand with our partners in Mexico, a methodology to prioritize. And this was to create capacities, to develop capacities, and the need to have clear criteria to assign limited resources for adaptation. Because we all know that we have limited budget and limited human resources, and the territory is so wide and big that we need to interact together in a joint strategies. So this was 2 years of intense work since 2013 to 2015, and we got to the first version of the tool. And now, since 2017 to 2018, last 2 years, we adapted the tool to enhance the focus on EBA. So it's very important because of the high value of the natural resources that Mexico as country has, as a mega diverse country. Okay, we could go to the next one. Thank you, Andrea. So basically, the methodology emerges due to a need of having clear and transparent criteria to select adaptation measures in the ground. Then to prioritize those measures once we have a portfolio of adaptation measures that are relevant and that are adequate to the local context, that can feasibly be implemented in the territory. And also to assign resources in an efficient and an effective way, and also to have a high impact, and that we are, yes, tackling the troubles that climate change are having in our ecosystems and our cities and in our social systems. So it's a flexible tool. It can be used in diverse contexts, I mean regions, scales, actors, and also sectors. We can think about fisheries, we can think about the agricultural, we can also think about the urban context or the forests, and we can the energy sector, and a lot of wide different sectors that can be adapted. And it is friendly, user-friendly, and is simple to use. The next slide, please. So, why is it relevant to include EBA's approach? Well, it's relevant because it's a national priority within Mexico because of the NDC. And it also helps the users to identify the benefits of EBA measures, to have some mixed hybrid adaptation measures that can mix between green solutions, gray solutions, and also blue solutions. No? I'm talking about blue when the water and the uses of water. No? So according to users' needs, it can provide further elements and support during the process of selecting the most efficient and relevant measures that will have a real impact in the territory, so we could reduce the vulnerability. So it gives us additional criteria. So the updated of this methodology, it gave criteria to focus on ecosystem-based approaches, and it gives us also guiding elements. We can go to the next slide. So this is the scope, and I must just make a pause here because it's important. Where you can see in this diagram, this is a Mexican toy. It's called Reilete, and it has like 7 steps, and it's like a wind blowing toy that you can blow, and then it has a very dynamic, and it spins around as an helix. And well, that's the methodology organized in 7 specific steps, and it's the process of prioritizing the adaptation measures. But ex ante, before using the methodology, we have to have a specific sector or territory vulnerability diagnosis. This vulnerability assessment has to be with the present and future, using climate change scenarios. And this is very important. It must be based on scientific knowledge and findings, but it also can be done in a quick participatory with the community, identifying the principal vulnerabilities against climate change and extreme weather events. And then it also needs a process of identifying the options of adaptation measures. Just identifying, like setting them up, and then the methodology, what it does is it describes each of those, or characterizes each of those measures in a very good organized way. So it gives us that possibility. And then here comes the methodology where it is used for policymakers and for decision makers, and also private or community stakeholders, where they can plan and select and organize and prioritize the most important and feasible actions they should do in a specific time-bound setting. And after that, the users must implement and instrumentate the adaptation actions selected and prioritized previously by the methodology. So that's the scope of the tool. Then we can go on the next. Okay, so those are the 7 steps. I'm not going to read them because we're going to follow up in the following slides. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, the first step is designing the process. You have to define the objective of the process and identify which actors are going to be involved and what are their responsibilities going to be assigned. No? Then you have to clarify the resources to select key actors that can be stakeholders that must be invited in the process, and then you have to define who's going to conduct the process. Is it going to be a steering committee? Is it going to be a staff that is going to prepare the workshops and convene and make the venues with participants, and etc. And then to determine the scope of the prioritization process that we're going to add. So the most important is that it is a participatory process. Next slide, please. Once we've done that, we can go on the second step, and this is a very important step because it's the one that gives us elements to select the specific criteria that are going to help us to prioritize or to rank the most important elements that we want once we are selecting those options. So if I was a representative from the agriculture sector, I would select certain criteria that are going to be most important, more important than others, if I was another representative from the forestry sector. So this is very important because this is a tailor customed tool that must be customized by each user. So you select and define the criteria according to adaptation objectives. So there are, in this chart, it's very little, the letter, you can't read, and it's also in Spanish, so I apologize about that. But what it says is that it has the elements, and it organizes it with different categories, so the social categories, and others like the economical, and others that are like ecosystem-based, and others that have to do with the policy making process specifically. So what it does is it gives certain groups of criteria, and then it has specific particular criteria. So we would say, okay, if we were speaking about the social group of criteria, we will have three of them, and one of the most important one is to attend the most vulnerable segments of society, or the population that are settled in that community, or in that region, or in that population. Another criteria is that the objective population, or the specific target population where the activity is going to be implemented, there must be an active participation of their involvement of them to empower them in the decision-making process. Another criteria within social group would be the gender perspective. It is very important to include the gender perspective because there are certain communities and certain societies and cultural, historical backgrounds that define those communities, and it is very important to have the opinion and the participation of each of the sexes. So that's what it does, and I'm not going to read them all, but what it does is that it establishes the criteria, it makes a definition of that criteria, or a clear understanding of that criteria, and then it gives ranks of qualification, ranks of points, where you can then, when you select the options, you can qualify or rank each of the measures you have selected using this specific criteria that you have previously selected. So you have to rank them in order to say, okay, if we were speaking about that my principal criteria is attending the most vulnerable populations, you could rank as this, giving a score of 0 if the measure or the adaptation measure that you selected does not attend or worsens the conditions of vulnerability, or undermines the conditions of vulnerability. You can give it to a qualification of 0. Then you could, the other stage would be 1 to 5, a score of 1 to 5, and that is to rank if the measure is mediumly focused on attending the most vulnerable population of that community. And then the ranking, or the score, the highest score would be to select a measure that would be strongly focused on the most vulnerable populations of that community. So that's the logic of the criteria. Okay, we could go to next. Then on the third step is, once we have this portfolio of adaptation, EBA adaptation measures, we would then have a detailed description of the measures. So the tool provides the user with a specific chart, or a specific format in a table where you can analyze and identify each of the measures that is going to be part of the prioritization process. So you have a template where it describes thoroughly those measures, and the new version integrates some new elements that will help decision makers analyze and identify benefits, costs, and limitations of the EBA measures and other adaptation measures that can be selected in that specific context. Okay, so the fourth step would be just to show that the methodology has been created since 2015 till now, and it has been piloted and it has been implemented in specific territories in Mexico. For example, with the help of SEMARNAT and the Ministry of the Environment, and with the help of the CONANP, that is the National Commission of Natural Protected Areas in Mexico, so the forestries, no? And we have implemented it, and I'm just going to give you the examples of what type of measures they have been done in which places. So it's in Quintana Roo, it's a state, the southern east state of Mexico in the Caribbean, and we have made mangrove reforestation restoration. Basically, it is very interesting because it gives you can build artificial isles for seeding and restoring those mangrove. Okay, and we can go to the next one just quickly. This is another picture, an image of how the artificial isles have been set. The next, please. Then we can see in another place in Nayarit, that is in the eastern part of Mexico, more in the middle, in the center of the country, but in the coastline with the Pacific. And it's Marismas Nacionales, and we've held with CONANP some workshops on EBA measures with the local community, and it also have activities for restoration of natural barriers from hydrometeorological hazards, because mangroves and all these forestry in the are natural barriers against hurricanes and other tropical storms. And another, please. Okay, so this is another image of how they can build with wood and sticks, like fences to protect the branches and other wastes being polluting those ecosystems, and activities as measuring topography levels also in order to control flooding, because it's very important to control those levels of high the water is grading up or down. Then we could go next slide. There's another image on aquaculture, protection of species from natural predators. We also have stress control and health maintenance and adequate disposal of wastes and residual products on those coastlines. And then in the next slide, it's in Chiapas, that is the southern part of Mexico. It's a very jungle sylvatic zone, and we have also natural barrier restricted areas for fishes and the elaboration of climate impact change with the communities. So it's very important to assess vulnerability. And then we have another image on the next slide. It's Cuatro Ciénegas, that's in Coahuila. It's a northern state. It's a nearly desert landscape, and we have made some activities as water conservation, sustainable agriculture production, and vulnerability assessment within the community. So you can see some slides here. So we can go in the next slide on the 19, the step 4. Okay, once we've identified those options and when we establish the criteria, we must make a stop. We must make a pause in the methodology. And this is the step of review and adjustment. You make a pause for reviewing the progress. The specific measures are reviewed, and those that not meet the basic requirements will get adjusted. And then different stakeholders are included. All the criteria are also reviewed as well. If we forgot specific criteria that are very important to include, that we have to do, well, you can do so. After we've done that, we can then go to the heart of the tool. That's the step 5. It's a prioritization using a multi-criteria analysis. And this multi-criteria analysis is a very qualitative procedure. It's also very how would we say it? It's subjective, because as you know, you have multi-criteria, and it's has to do with the values established by the different participants, and that they understand wellly the criteria previously established. And they all have to have the same information and the same definitions of what we are understanding of that definitions of that criteria that we are going to use. So then we could, the tool has a specific Excel sheet where it's previously programmed, and it allows the users to upload all the measures and to start the qualification or using the criteria within those measures that have been selected, and then you score each of those measures according to the different criteria that you have previously set. And okay, users prioritize the measures, evaluating them according to previously weighted criteria, and as a result of this step, users will have an ordered and a prioritized list of the adaptation options. So the most important thing of it is that once you have a portfolio, a previous ranked portfolio of adaptation measures that need to be upheld or implemented in the future, and it tells us which, with our restricted monetary or budget or human resources, which of them are the most feasible measures that could be implemented. Okay, we could go to the next step. This is a chart of how the diagrams of how the results of the prioritization step goes, and the tool is available online. The previous version, it's in the government official online of SEMARNAT in Mexico, and also you can download it from I think adaptationcommunity.net GIZ. But also, but the latest version that has been just updated since the last year on December, it was finished, and now we are in a process with the Ministry of the Environment in Mexico to upload it on the official webpage, so you can access to it. Okay, so those are the charts, and you have different diagrams and different tables where you can rank and you can value the qualifications of the measures that you have done in the prioritization step. So we can go to the next. The next step is the economic analysis, and once you have, I mean, imagine that you have first began the tool with, you identify that you have 30 adaptation measures, EBA measures identified for a specific territory in your country or your context. And then you have the tool, you get to the step 5, and with the multi-criteria analysis, you select you rank them, the 30 measures, and you get to 10. You get to the 10 most important measures, and you rank them with qualification and certain scores. Okay, once you have those 10, you can then go to the next step, that is the economic analysis, and each of those 10 ecosystem-based adaptation measures that have been ranked, you can put them on a cost-benefit analysis or cost-effectiveness analysis. We have another tool within the methodology that allows the users to submit and value economically all the measures that have been ranked and that have been selected or identified in my portfolio. So users are encouraged to perform a cost-benefit analysis, a cost-effective analysis of the top measures that resulted from the multi-criteria analysis on step 5. The methodology includes an Excel workbook with a detailed description on how to use it, and it also has a manual user guide included on how to perform a cost-benefit or cost-effective analysis. But it's not just economically; it is also socially. It is a cost-benefit social analysis, and that's the tricky point, because it includes externalities, positive or negative externalities, and it puts a value on natural resources that is very difficult to monetize. And I mean, life does not have an economical value. That is the most philosophical questions of all, because you can't put a specific amount of money in a forest. You can, with certain options of economic evaluation or whatever, try to infer what are the profitability of those, but you can never put a price on that specific forest. Okay, because it's it's sacred, no? It's intangible, and it's very important to the livelihoods and to the ecosystems and to the ecosystem services that provide to all the communities within those areas. So the objective is to have a quantitative analysis of the prioritized measures as an additional guidance for decision making and implementation. And it also makes evaluation of ecosystem services, as I told you. It is essential for the adequate economic evaluations of EBA measures. So the outputs are very econometric. You can have different discount rates, net present value. You can also have internal rate of return, the cost to benefits, the cost benefit ratio, the cost effectiveness index. Okay, so we can go to the next stage. This is just a chart that we have recently. The tool has been updated, and we have another platform. And unfortunately, it is only in Spanish. We are now in the process to translate it in English so we can have it worldwide. But users can access that CBA cost-benefit analysis online platform on the next site. And it has a friendly user manual. And it's also, I'm sorry, in Spanish just, but in the next couple of months it will be in English. And it allows, well, from the first version, what we did is that we reprogrammed the tool. It was made in another computer language called Python. It allows to maintain multiple and simultaneous users at the same time. So, further on, the form of presenting cash flows was improved, allowing a major flexibility in the initial and final dates of the different costs and benefits identified. The format of the presentation of the numerical results was also improved so that they are more legible. For example, the previous version was showing just scientific notation in certain cases. Now you can find more monetary notations. The legends of the graphs were also improved, and a column was added in order to establish what is the point of rupture of every cost and benefit, which indicates in what percentage it has to increase or diminish a concept so that the project stops being profitable. So that is very important for investors. They always, when they want to invest monies or they can finance different adaptation or EBA options, they want to know, okay, I'm going to invest this amount of money, and with this in discount rate and in this the period, living period of my project, how much money I'm going to recover in what period of time, and is this measure and this investment going to be successful in monetary terms and also in adaptation terms. So there's a column that indicates the user where is the point of rupture identified, and where it tells the user how you can solve that, mixing the finance or giving other alternatives. Okay, so we can go to the next chart. The next chart is a diagram of the results and of the Excel sheet, and also because of the online platform that you can access, and then you can have the results and you can export them to an Excel sheet and have them in a file that you can save on your computer, and then you can print, and then you can share with all your colleagues or other stakeholders involved in the process. Because it's very important to do that. Okay, then we can go to the next step. It's the monitoring and the feedback. So once we've done this multi-criteria analysis and cost-benefit analysis, we then have my previous prioritized adaptation options, and the objective on this step is to close that cycle, that prioritization cycle, as well as feedback, including lessons learned, is crucial within the participants. And the other users document and systematize lessons learned during the process in order to promote transparency and learning. It's very important to do this as a cycle. So if we go to the next sheet, one next slide, we can see that there are just remarks of the additional resources in this version 2 with the EBA focus. We delivered a fact sheet about EBA that it's also on PDF format, and it's available once we upload this new version. It has a new specific criteria, EBA criteria, that can be worldwide used. It's very important. It also says about relevance of EBA specifically for a country of Mexico. It has useful links and resources like guides, supporting documents, videos, economic valuation, PowerPoints. It also has Excel sheets where you can organize all the workshops, all your lists of stakeholders invited, and you can also systematize all the information that is needed. It all included in a platform that is organized step by step, where all the materials can be downloaded into your computer and then use it and as work documents and papers. Examples of prioritized EBA measures are given, specific ones and that have been successful in Mexico. And then we have, as I mentioned before, an updated cost-benefit analysis platform. And soon, as I told you, it will be uploaded on the official SEMARNAT webpage and also on adaptationcommunity.net webpage. So next slide is an example of how we are contrasting an EBA-specific adaptation measure from another adaptation measure that not necessarily has to be EBA. It can be a gray measure. I'm speaking about when I speak about gray measures, I'm talking about infrastructure and built environmental engineering within the territory, and also other blue or green measures. So the contrast measure 1, that's a community restoration and sustainable use of mangroves, and it contrasts with another measure that could be building a seawall or building a dike, including environmental compensation strategies. And then it reflects one of those, and then with the different criteria and submitting them with the tool, and with the multi-criteria analysis and the cost-benefit analysis, you can get the results to see which one of them is more effective, or is more prioritized, or which one is more cost-effective or cost-benefit. So this is in this particular case, we identify that measure 1 was more effective in a multi-criteria subjective way, because it had better benefits on the long and in the short and long term as building a seawall, not restoring the mangrove. And the other measure in economic analysis, we saw that also the measure was profitable. No, it was more cheapest is to restore than to build, because of the tools you have to and hire, and all the infrastructure that you have to, and because also that you are changing the landscape of that coastal area. So that's very important to emphasize on the EBA type of measures. So I would close here to receive any questions, and there are my email and other colleagues that collaborated with us on the developing this updating of the tool, and I would be very looking forward for your comments and remarks on the subject. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Camilo, for this very insightful presentation as well, and some philosophical food for thought as well on how to value ecosystems and the social aspects about it. So I think there were some questions from the audience. For example, what values and unit prices do you base the evaluation of externalities in your tool?
Yes, well, basically all the measures that were valued economically for, in this case, for Mexico, we have an index of prices, official index of prices in Mexico. We in Mexico have 3 different regions of prices that are being set by the Ministry of Finance, and services and products specifically, if we would buy them. And they are set for 3 different regions: the north, the central part of Mexico, and the southern parts. So that was one starting point. And another is to value the externalities, is whether there was gaps of information, because we don't have the information of how much does a river cost if it has high quality of clean water against another river that has been polluted by a specific industry nearby. So we had to do some craftsman, it's some and with the help of some
See the desktop.
Yes, it's loading. Yes.
Okay, great. So let me just quickly look whether there's an additional question. When using these methodologies, the key factor is usually time and resources. How much time did you spend for the application to get the results you showed on the example?
Okay, well, when we first developed the methodology, we took like nearly 3 years to develop it. But at the same time, we were piloting the methodology with our institutional counterparts. We piloted it and we created it with 3 specific actors in the governmental area. It was the Ministry of Environment. We also had the Ministry of the Commission of Water, and we have the Ministry of Agriculture. In these 3 sectors, it was environment, it was water, watersheds, and also forestry and agriculture and livestock. And it took a long time to do it because we were developing the tool. But now that it has been developed, the user can set a time frame to prioritize depending on the amount of measures that you have. And you can set different periods of time to do it. You can do a fast-track prioritization process that could be lasting a week or 2 weeks, or you can have another serious period of 6 months to prioritize with a participatory process with all the actors convened and going to the communities, having the rural actors to stakeholder and in working with workshops and identifying the vulnerability and then selecting the measures and then prioritizing the measures. And so this could be, yes, a process that could last 6 months, or you can even take it further on for a year. But because of stakeholders and policy makers and decision makers have the time very ways, they had it is recommended to do it in a short period of time, short and medium period of time, so you can then implement, because you need to implement. This is just a tool that helps the decision making to have the best information you need and to take the most effective decisions, to select those measures and then to implement them on the territory.
Okay, thank you very much, and also to the participants who are still in, although we are a bit behind time, but thanks again for all your questions and comments. I would like to conclude this session now, and if you have further questions, please contact Camilo or Tânia and me via email. The recordings of this webinar will be online soon on Adaptation Community Net, and we will send around the link as soon as possible. So now I would quickly like to invite you to a short feedback regarding this webinar. You can find the link within the chat box function. It's only one question, would be great if you fill it out. And thank you very much. Many greetings to Cambridge and Mexico again. We will keep you updated regarding future webinars, and have a pleasant day.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.